On today's show, we'll talk about the All-Star game formats for the NBA and the NHL as they try to spice things up and keep the relationship fresh with the fans. And we'll take a quick look at Champions League in Europe and see what the best soccer tournament in the world is up to across the pond. This is your host, Alvin, aka Sportsmanship, and this is episode 7 of the Ballsy Podcast. So today we'll start off with the NHL. The NHL has its All-Star Game weekend, and this season they're doing something new called the Four Nations Face-Off. This is basically an all-star tournament, a round-robin tournament. The teams involved will be national teams, and these teams are going to be the USA, Canada, Finland, and Sweden. The point system will go as follows. You get 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime or shootout win, 1 point for an overtime or shootout loss, and you get 0 points for regulation loss. So the top 2 teams will face off in a one-game final and be crowned the champions of this Four Nations face-off. And that's very interesting. I'm not sure about the NHL and their All-Star games if they have had problems like the NBA in terms of competitiveness. I assume there must be some kind of thing going on if they had to make this new format a thing. I'll be doing more NHL videos. I'm new to the NHL and hockey, and I think it's a great sport, and I'm going to make a few videos so that you can follow on my journey as I educate myself on hockey and the NHL. On that note, I'm going to segue into the NBA. Now, the NBA's All-Star game has been non-competitive, boring, pretty terrible the last few years, maybe the last decade. And they've been trying all sorts of things to spice things up. This is a brand new thing that they're doing this year. They're also doing a mini tournament, which is very interesting since the NHL is also doing a mini tournament. And basically, this mini tournament is going to be it's going to be 4 teams also, like the NHL, 4 teams. They were in a draft. The 3 teams were drafted by Shaquille O'Neal, Kenny Smith, and Charles Barkley, the part of the TNT crew, in that famous show. And one team will be the champion of the Rising Star Rookie Game Tournament Challenge. That's another tournament also. So you got 4 teams just drafted by those 3 former players, Shaq, Kenny, and Barkley. So the format of these games is no time, first team to 40 points wins. And then obviously you'll have 2 winners, and then those 2 winners will go on and compete for the championship final game. The winners, you get the most money as you move on. So hopefully that incentivizes the players. And hopefully it's a good format. It's kind of sad that it had to go to this, but that's just what it is. You know, it is what it is. For today's top 5, we're going to do, I'm not even going to say top 5. I'm going to call these 5 competitive, memorable All-Star games from after 1990. So in no particular order, we have the 2001 All-Star game, which was in Washington, D.C. The final score was East 111, West 110. The East trailed by 21 points in the fourth quarter before mounting a ferocious comeback by Allen Iverson and Stephon Marbury. Iverson scored 15 of his 25 in the final 9 minutes, and Marbury hit the game-winning three-pointer with under a minute left. And the West had a chance to win, but Tim Duncan missed the last-second shot. So the MVP of that game was Allen Iverson. That's an example of a competitive game. Second competitive game, 2003 NBA AllStar game in Atlanta. West won 155 to the East 145 in a double overtime game. Michael Jordan's final All-Star game, and he nearly sealed the win with a classic fadeaway jumper in the final seconds of regulation. However, the West forced overtime and eventually pulled away. MVP was Kevin Garnett. Obviously, that says it in itself. You got Michael Jordan. Number 3, 1993 All-Star game in Salt Lake City. The West won 135 to 132. An overtime game. Obviously, tightly contested. Karl Malone and John Stockton playing in front of their home crowd led the West to victory. Malone scored 28 points and grabbed 10 rebounds. Stockton had 15 assists. The East had a chance to tie the game in the final seconds, but a three-point attempt was missed. Karl Malone and John Stockton, co-MVPs. Number 4, 2017 NBA All-Star game in New Orleans. The West won 192 to 182. The final score doesn't suggest that it was tight, but the game was actually competitive until the final minutes. Anthony Davis set an All-Star game record with 52 points, but the East kept it close with performances from LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo. The West pulled away late, and after a hard-fought game, Anthony Davis won the MVP. And number 5, the 1990 All-Star game in Miami, the East won 130 to 113. Now, why was this competitive? The game was closer than the final score. The East pulled away in the fourth quarter. Magic Johnson and Isaiah Thomas went head-to-head in a battle of point guards. The game featured intense defense for an All-Star game. Magic finished with 22 and 6 assists, while Thomas led the East with 22 points. The MVP was Magic Johnson. So it was just a competitive game. Basically, I don't know if we'll ever get back to these kind of games on the East. We're obviously not even doing a game. We're doing tournaments to make it competitive, and hopefully it works, and we'll see. I mean, there's been all these different kind of attempts, and maybe one thing will stick, or maybe we'll just have to keep spicing things up, making things different. So with that being said, let's go to Europe for some soccer, Champions League soccer. I'm going to do some Champions League content, or European soccer content, rather. I'm a big soccer fan. I do watch soccer, and I'm going to maybe show also some educational videos on soccer for people that don't know about soccer, try to get them into soccer. Like I said before, I'm going to do some NHL hockey videos, but this will be my journey learning about hockey and the NHL, which I don't know much about. And then in terms of soccer, I'm going to make videos educating the bit that I know. I mean, I'm not an expert on soccer. I'm a soccer fan, and I do watch soccer, and I am familiar with teams and players. So I'm gonna try to, the bit that I know, I'm gonna try to let you guys into my head and pause into into my knowledge, the knowledge that I have. I'll share the knowledge that I have in the game, in the beautiful game, soccer, football, as they call it. I'll be calling it soccer for this podcast. So everybody who gets upset, oh, it's football, and a lot of people in Europe and around the world, it's not a big deal. We call it soccer in the U.S. It's not a big deal, guys. You guys call in the U.K., or some people call a fag is a cigarette. I'm not going to tell you it's not called a fag. It's called a cigarette. Like, Come on. A bloke, dude. Come on, guys. It's not a big deal. Soccer is football over there. We have American football. It's not a big deal. Anyway, so let's go into let me pull up the Champions League bracket real quick and follow with me. I know some of you might not know what this is, but maybe you'll be familiar with some games. So basically, the Champions League is like in Europe. Basically, in Europe, you have the Champions League, and I'm not going to get into too much detail, but if you ever follow NCAA basketball, it's basically like the NCAA tournament in basketball. College basketball has the NCAA tournament and the NIT tournament. European soccer has the Champions League and the Europa League, and it's kind of a similar concept. And the top teams in the world that you ever heard of, usually it's like Barcelona, Real Madrid, Milan, Chelsea, these kind of teams. Manchester United, they're not in it, but they've been terrible the last few years. But basically the big names that you might have heard of, they're always in this tournament. And this is like the I won't say Super Bowl. This is basically like, European Super Bowl, I would say. That's the best way to put it. I'm going to mention the teams that have a bye right now. They don't have to play right now because in the beginning part of the Champions League, they've gotten through and they have a bye. I'll start from the bottom up. So we have Inter Milan playing out of the league in Italy. They have a bye. So they're Arsenal playing out of the Premier League in England. Leverkusen playing out of the Bundesliga. That's the German league. Atletico Madrid playing out of La Liga. That's the Spanish league out of Spain. Aston Villa playing out of the Barclays Premier League in England also. Lille playing out of Ligue 1. That's the France's top league. Barcelona playing out of La Liga as well in Spain. You've heard that name. And Liverpool in the Premier League in England. So those 8 teams that I mentioned, they have a bye. So they're not playing right now in the Champions League. They're awaiting who comes out of these other not round robin, but other two-leg matchups. So basically, if you are not aware with Champions League, the way it works is rather than playing like a series like how you do in basketball or in baseball, American football, obviously you just play one game in the playoffs, but rather than play a series, you play 2 games, one at home, one away, and then you have an aggregate. So whoever scores the most goals within those 2 games, they advance forward. So you could win one game by 4 goals to 0, 4 goals to 0, and then lose the next game 3 goals to 0, and you still advance. That's like an example. Okay, so now I'm gonna tell you guys next week the games that we'll see who advances, and a team called Brest from France plays Paris Saint-Germain, who is France's top team. Club Brugge, I'm not sure where they play. I'm not sure what league they play. They play Atalanta from Italy. Manchester City versus Manchester City out of England plays Real Madrid out of Spain. These are 2 heavyweight teams. They've actually won the last 2 Champions Leagues, but obviously somebody's gonna knock another person out for the next game. Juventus out of Italy plays PSV out of the Dutch league. Monaco out of the not Italian, France. They play in the Ligue 1. France, they play Benfica out of Portugal's league. Sporting, which is also from Portugal, plays Dortmund, which is my favorite team in the Bundesliga. They're in Germany. Celtic out of, I guess they play, what is that, the Irish Premier League? I'm not sure what Celtics plays, actually. I got to look that up. I should know that. They play Bayern Munich out of the top team in Germany. And Feyenoord, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. They play, that's in the Dutch league. They play Milan. By the way, I'll go through my favorite teams. My favorite team in all of soccer is Real Madrid. My favorite team, and they play in the La Liga in Spain. I have favorite teams in each league because they're different leagues. So it's kind of like how I explained before that it's kind of like college basketball here in the U.S. where you have conferences like, for example, the Big East, the ACC, the Big Ten. Like each country has its league. It's easier to follow because it's not like SEC and Big East where teams go in and out. No, it's always going to be this league is in this country and that's it. So that's pretty easy. So basically, like I said, my favorite team in all of soccer is Real Madrid, who plays in Spain, in the Spanish La Liga is called. For the Premier League, the English Premier League, Barclays Premier League, that's in England. They're considered maybe the top league out of all. My favorite team in that league is Chelsea. In Germany, is called the Bundesliga. My favorite team is Dortmund, Borussia Dortmund. In Italy, my favorite team is Juventus. And that's Serie A. In France, I would have to say that my favorite team would have to be PSG, Paris Saint-Germain. There's no other team that I think I can say would be my favorite team in that league. That one is more shaky. The other ones are solid, and then I don't really have a favorite league and a favorite team in Amsterdam. I think that's the top leagues right there. We're only talking about the top leagues. And that is it. Next week, I think they play next. Yeah, they play next week is the next part of the Champions League. We're going to dive into the Champions League. And that's about it, guys. With that being said, this is the Ballsy Podcast. I'm your host, Alvin, a.k.a. Sportsmanship. And that's about it.